Eh? Eh? That's what you do when you mess around a little bit with some video templates and Premiere Pro, huh? How's it looking? How's it looking? We're upgrading over here. No, that's brand new, Jordan. That's brand new. First week I pulled that one out. So, yeah, it looked cool. So I wanted to play it. And that'll probably be the intro from now on, unless people really hate it. All right. Welcome in, everybody, to the week 3 Friday with Addison live stream. Just another AMA, just hanging out on this nice Friday afternoon. So welcome in, welcome in. We got a bunch of questions already in here. So Toronto Dave is in the chat. What's up, my man? Jordan, I liked it. Hey, Jamie, what's going on? Bay Diamonds, nice intro. Weston, sick intro. Joe, new intro. What's up? What's up? Welcome into the stream, everybody. We can start out at the very top with Mr. Mole. Says, hey, Addison, need 2 for flex, PPR. Pirine, Dortch, or Ferguson? This is where we're at already. It's only week 3, and this is where we're already at. All right, let's see. So I have John Paulson's rankings up. So we're gonna see what he says. Before we look this up, my initial gut reaction to this was Dortch and Ferguson, because I just don't know what Pirine is going to be. Pirine is flex 72. Dortch is flex 112. Holy moly. And Ferguson is currently not ranked because we're not sure if he's going to play yet. So if Ferguson doesn't play, that's a very easy answer. I think if he does play, I would like to play him against Baltimore. And I would play Dortch. I just don't know what Pirine is going to be. I don't know what this Chiefs offense is going to look like. That's like my only hesitation with playing him. I understand going for it from a semi-volume, and you're thinking that he's going to get some of the receiving work because Carson Steele isn't really a receiver. I understand that point. So if you want some floor, I understand going with him, but Dortch is also kind of a floor play too. And they play Atlanta, which has been kind of a rough matchup for running backs so far. So for me, it's Dortch and Ferguson, but if you want to play Pirine, I'm not totally against it. Peter, team off to a mid start. Thoughts on this? I send Hawk, Palmer, Taysom, get Tank, Goddard, and a 26th third. 1 quarterback, 12 team start, 7. Rest of the team is Stroud, Daniels, Bijan, ETN, Benson. So yeah, I don't really care about. It's rough to say I don't really care about Palmer. I was in on him as a really fun dart throw, but he's been very disappointing. That whole passing offense has been really disappointing. So him, Taysom is kind of whatever. You already have Andrews, so I like going over to get Tank Dell. I'm not really sure what Tank ultimately gives you this week, because or like this year more or less in terms of production. Just because I mean he's been out there. They play 11 personnel. He's out there all the time. So when they are going to throw it, he's there. It's just that when you have other similarly talented or perhaps even more talented players, a la Nico Collins. Tank Dell is just kind of he's not one of the top targets, or at least is not the top target. So his weekly production is going to be pretty inconsistent. You're not playing him over Nico. You're when T. Higgins comes back, it's going to be interesting with Pittman not doing well, Rome's not doing well, Deontay's not doing well. I guess Tank comes in and immediately is your wide receiver too, but then you're strapped into the Texans offense, which you do have Stroud. So maybe that's not the worst case scenario, but I think I understand it from a value standpoint. I just don't know if it's the most optimal move. And I do like selling off of TJ Hawkinson. Then you go over, get Tank Dell. And then maybe it's easier to use Tank Dell to do a 2-for-1 upgrade. Try to get somebody up in the Nico Collins kind of a range. If you do Tank and Michael Pittman, and then you move up and get Garrett Wilson or buy low on Puka, or, somebody like that. I was going to say Malik Neighbors, but I think that ship has sailed with his performance last week. But so if you think that you could do that, then I'm all for it. If you think Tank Dell is an easier sell than TJ Hawkinson is right now, because at least Tank Dell's playing. So I get both sides of it. I just don't. It just seems like a really mid trade on both sides. But if it helps you step into something further, then I don't mind it. Cameron in a Superflex 12 by 10 PPR, guys panicking about the Tua injury, offered me Tyreek and 225 firsts for Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's even though that's enough, even with the expected hit to Tyreek's rest of season outlook, question mark, won last year and is still a heavy contender. Wow. Tyreek in 2 late first for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like on the value, you like from a value standpoint, with the fact that you are competing, getting Tyreek Hill is not bad. We just had a Ben Johnson quote saying that, asking about involvement for Sam Laporta and everything, and he's saying that just because of the amount of talent that they have on their team, whoever's week it is, it could be anybody. It could be Amon-Ra, it could be Jameson Williams 1 week, as we've seen in week 1 and week 2. 1 week it could be Sam Laporta. 1 week it could just be ground and pound into submission, basically, with Monty and Jahmyr Gibbs. And there's not really much for the receiving game in general. There's just a lot of talent on that Lions team he said that it's not guaranteed that anybody gets a specific number of targets every single week. I don't know that necessarily is bad for Amon-Ra, because he is probably the most talented player on that team outside of maybe Jahmyr Gibbs. But at least from a receiver standpoint, he probably is the most talented guy. So I think he should get his. But still, at the very same time, it's Tyreek Hill. I don't think that his fantasy outlook has definitely dropped without Tua. He still averages, I think, eight targets a game. He just doesn't do all that much with them because he's not getting the downfield threats. He's seen more of as a quick hitter kind of guy, extension of the run game, slant routes, curl routes, all that kind of stuff, just to get Skyler easy passes. This is a very long-winded answer of me saying I think I would take the Tyreek in the 2 firsts and then try to see what I could do with those other 2 firsts to maybe upgrade somewhere else. I also don't hate just keeping Amon-Ra. I totally understand that from a heavy contender standpoint of just saying, you know what, I'll just keep Amon-Ra. But if you feel like you could use those other 2, this is kind of a similar answer to Peter's. If you feel like you could use those other 2 firsts as a way to upgrade somewhere else, or maybe you go and you flip Tyreek in a first for Nico Collins or for Jamar Chase or somebody like that. If you can buy low on one of them, then you essentially turned Amon-Ra into Chase in a first or Nico in a first, and then you got an extra first on top of it. So there's options there that again, this feels like it's very league dependent on what you want to do with moves after this, but from a value standpoint, I think taking Tyreek in the 2 firsts would be fine as a contender and would be fun to do something with later on down the road. That was a really long answer, so I apologize to everybody else. YWL Superflex 12 by 10 half PPR. Give Devonta Smith in a second. Get Godwin and a first. Wow. Or Smitty for 2 firsts from an aging team in 2026 and 2027. Interesting. I like giving up Devonta Smith in both trades. I think I do prefer still this first one with Godwin in the first. I think 2 firsts for Devonta Smith is nice. It does hurt that they're 2 and 3 years in the future, so maybe that's not as optimal. But that might be the only way that you're getting 2 firsts for a receiver like Devonta Smith. I think I like this one though, because I don't think you really lose all that much production going from Smith to Godwin. Arguably, at least right now, if things continue, you're getting more production out of Chris Godwin, especially whenever AJ Brown does come back with, his hamstring injury or whatever. But then you upgraded that second to a first, and ideally that's not like a couple of picks. Hopefully that's like, like you said, like a mid first, like 106, 107, and then ends up being like 202, 203 or something. I think I would do that to go get Godwin. I would trade Smith in the second for Godwin in the first. Vince made 2 trades yesterday. Want some feedback? Both same team and league. 12 teams start 9 Superflex. One to upgrade wide receiver and running back. Trade 1 sent London and Pittman. Got back Rice. Interesting. I don't mind that one at all. Rice, I think, is definitely entered into the category where if you want to do a 2-for-1 with 2 really kind of meh wide receiver 2s or even wide receiver 3s right now, and just go up and get Rashee Rice, who I think is definitely a top 12 dynasty wide receiver. He's entered into that conversation, so I don't mind that. I like the London and Pittman and get Rice. The other one is Brooks and Leggett for James Cook. Interesting. I don't mind this one either. I still feel like Brooks and Cook are pretty similarly valued. The Panthers' offense being what it is, as an absolute dumpster fire, definitely does not inspire confidence in Brooks's production when he returns from the pup list, especially with him being coming off of an ACL injury too. There's probably going to be a lot of growing pains there for this year. So just going and being able to get James Cook, I think, is still pretty solid from a contender standpoint, especially because it seems like the Bills want to run. Even and when they do want to pass, they could just dump it off to James Cook. Um, yeah, I'm not a huge James Cook fan, but I think from this trade, I think I would take the James Cook side, especially as a contender. You just, basically just consolidated, upgraded in a start nine. And like you said, you still have the extra depth of Addison, BTJ, Deontay, and ETN apparently as depth to play in the flex. So love it. Looks awful after last night's game, but would you trade Henry and a third for Ramondre and a second? Either are my RB2 behind Achane. Yes, I would. This kind of piggybacks off of what I was talking about in my I did my lessons learned video on Wednesday. So I talked about Derrick Henry and saying that I am kind of concerned about Henry from a not just the dynasty standpoint, because he's already losing dynasty value because of his age, but from just like a 2024 more or less a redraft take. I am kind of concerned about Derrick Henry just because the Ravens offense hasn't been what we want it to be. They seem very, very predictable, and Henry has this ability to get game scripted out of games. So if the Ravens, continue to play really, really good opponents and don't look as good against those opponents and don't score as much, then Henry is going to get game scripted out of that. Like we saw in week 1 against the Chiefs. He scored a touchdown. So thank God from a fantasy perspective, he scored. But had he not scored the touchdown, he probably would have had like 4, 5, maybe 6 fantasy points if he caught a reception. I think he only had like 40 yards and a touchdown in week 1. So that's kind of my concern with Henry. Ramondre kind of has a similar issue in the sense that his team is just terrible. And I think that he kind of got lucky with 2 really good matchups in week 1 and week 2 against a struggling Bengals team. And then I forget who they play. Oh, the Seahawks last week. He got a bunch of volume and everything. And the Seahawks defense is kind of meh against the run. So I think I think Henry for Ramondre. I would take Ramondre over Derrick Henry in Dynasty, and then you're upgrading from a third to a second. So yeah, give me Ramondre in the second here. Weston has Breece Hall. What should I be willing to pay to get Braelon Allen? Great question. Finally, or not finally, but like it's just fun, in my opinion, that we get to have this conversation about Braelon Allen, because I was really in on Braelon Allen as a rookie. His draft season did not do him any favors whatsoever. 4th round pick. So I had to kind of rein in on my Braelon Allen love from December, January, and into February. But I am all for it. I'm all for Braelon Allen. I don't think I would pay a second straight up for Braelon Allen. Maybe if it was like your contenders late second for Braelon Allen and just any random third, I probably would be more on board with that. But I don't think I would pay like a second straight up for Braelon Allen. He is really, really interesting, though. I mean, he had 10 fantasy points last night without scoring. So he's very much involved. He seems to be kind of more of like the 1B in this offense with Breece Hall, which isn't necessarily the greatest thing for Breece Hall, because one of the biggest benefits for him was that he had a bunch of volume and that we just expected that volume to just carry on. 2 years removed from the ACL injury now, and hopefully a better offense with Aaron Rodgers. That hasn't necessarily been the case. Now, it hasn't been detrimental to Breece Hall because he's still the 1A and he's still just uber talented. And he gets first shot at a lot of the red zone stuff. It's just Braelon happened to score twice with his 2 touches last week in week 2. But he looked great last night. Braelon Allen is fantastic. And he's an RB1 if Breece Hall were to ever get hurt at any point. You would rank Braelon Allen as a top 12 guy, a la Jordan Mason right now. But Braelon at least has more longevity. And it's just from a Braelon Allen standpoint, it is really annoying that he is a backup right now, because he would be killing it as a starter for multiple different teams. Like if he was a starter for Dallas, if he was a starter for Cincy, just a couple other teams like that he'd be a top 20 dynasty running back. So yeah, I wouldn't pay a straight up second, but a second for Braelon Allen and a third I think would be fine. Or Braelon Allen and something else is what I would try to pay. even if I don't have Breece Hall, I'd be looking to pay for Braelon Allen in that similar regard, because he does have, at least from the last 2 weeks, he does have somewhat standalone value. So it's fun. 12-team, one quarterback, half PPR, start 9, non-tight end premium. Add a mid-second to Laporta to get Bowers. Bowers' usage this early seems unreal, but love it. Worried Laporta is too touchdown dependent and the fourth option right now. I'm not against this. A mid-26, one quarterback second to just move over and just get the guy who's producing now. Seems like he is. Bowers is more talented than Sam Laporta. I think we can all firmly agree on that. And it's just in a better situation. So, yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine to move over to Brock Bowers and just kind of use the second to move over. I was going to say within a tier, but I don't even know if Brock Bowers is in the same tier as Laporta. He might be a tier ahead right now. So yeah, use the mid second, move over to Bowers. Braden, should I be looking to rebuild? And if so, what moves should I make? 12-team Superflex, start 10, tight end premium. Camera. I can't look away from my camera. I wonder if I can move this monitor so then I don't. Maybe move this a little over too. Sorry, I'm just trying to. There, maybe that'll help. I'm looking more this way now instead of this way. So maybe that'll help with my camera. All right, Braden. You have a pretty solid team here. I like you just are you're kind of struck by some bad luck so far this year, with Jordan Love getting hurt, Justin Herbert being a game manager. Dell's not producing well because of Diggs. Pittman's not producing well because of Richardson. Ferguson's been hurt. I don't know if I think entering a rebuild would be harsh. I think that you could. I definitely don't disagree that you could maybe start to look towards 2025 and try to make some more optimal moves in that regard. Maybe that means selling off of James Cook to a contender, selling off of Ramondre Stevenson to a contender. Maybe you could use both of those pieces rather than selling them for just straight up picks. Use them in a package deal to upgrade Justin Herbert, to upgrade Jordan Love, to upgrade Michael Pittman, to upgrade Tank Dell or Zay Flowers. How can you do some 2-for-1s with these running backs here? Because those running backs, especially James Cook, could be highly coveted by some contenders in your league right now. I don't know what your pick situation is. I would hope that you still have your 2025 first. If you don't have your 2025 first, I would not look to rebuild until you get that pick back, because then there's no point. What's the point in rebuilding to help somebody else, So hopefully that's my assumption, is that you have your first. So hopefully you do. But I think if you could just kind of, fall back, regroup, kind of count your losses a little bit for 2024, and then kind of regroup and devise a new strategy for 2025. I'm not against that. I think you have definitely a very young team. It's just this team wasn't made for 2024, unfortunately. You thought it probably was coming into the season, but the first couple of weeks is you've really taken some hard licks, and you just got to kind of, like I said, regroup, retool, build for 2025. And you're probably using Stevenson and Cook for that. I don't know what your pick situation is, but that's at least what I'd be looking to do. Maybe try and see if you can upgrade at the wide receiver position, or upgrade your quarterback position, and just do a reload, not a rebuild, just a reload. You don't got to tear it down, because you can still have really good pieces here. Trax, would you buy Puka for London Plus? Absolutely. And also, would you start London or JMO? And how would you rank these running backs for this week? Zamir, Javonte, Akers, and Steele. Oh my gosh. Yes, I would buy Puka for London Plus. The plus probably doesn't need to be a first right now, but I would pay up to a first for Puka with London. But if you can get him for anything less than a first, I think that would be fantastic. I would start Jameson Williams over Drake London this week. And then as for the running backs, I think Javonte is a pretty clear fourth. As I'm just trying to sort these guys in my head, that was like the easiest call. If Pierce and Mixon both miss, I think I play Akers this week. Or like, I think he would be at the top of the list. Yeah, Akers for Paulson's rankings is flex 43. Steele is flex 65. Javonte is flex 69. And Zamir is flex 48. So, yeah, if Akers has the backfield to himself without Pierce and Mixon, I think that he would be top of the list for me. Then I would play Zamir White next. He gets the Carolina Panthers. If you can't play Zamir White against the Carolina Panthers this year, you're never going to be able to play him ever again. So I would rank him second. I'd rank Carson Steele next for the upside of maybe he gets a bulk of the carries with Pacheco out this week. There's still a little bit of unknown, though, so he doesn't have the same confidence level of Akers by himself in the backfield or Zamir, ideally, against the Panthers. And then Javonte would be fourth for me. So that's how I'd rank him. Jordan, if A-Rich is my QB3 behind Allen and Murray, should I try to hold him or try and down tier from him and get a wide receiver on top? I would love to try to tier down from him. It doesn't even necessarily need to be like a crazy drop. Like you don't got to go all the way down to like Will Levis or Bo Nix or Bryce Young or anything like that. But I think that you could probably get like a really, really good wide receiver. Let's see what I'll just use keep trade cut just for the heck of it. If we type in Anthony Richardson and we choose a tier down quarterback of let's go with all these names are gross. Hey, let's maybe you can buy low on Tua. You'll get a better wide receiver with Tua. Keep trade cut says that you could trade Anthony Richardson down to Tua and Devonta Smith. Sounds pretty solid. Or Trey McBride if you wanted a tight end. Those are the possibilities that Keep Trade Cuts trade calculator says. Now, instead of Tua, if it was maybe we'll just say Brock Purdy as a solid QB3. Purdy. Then that gets you Mike Evans or Jordan Addison, Ladd McConkey, according to this. So the higher up the quarterback tier you go, obviously the worst wide receiver that you're going to get. If you go to somebody like Baker, I feel like you're not going to get Baker and Jameson Williams, Baker and George Pickens, DJ Moore, Jaden Reed. Those are kind of the receivers that Keep Trade Cut says that you could get with Baker. And then Goff would be, same value with Jared Goff. All of those I would do, by the way, with Anthony Richardson as your QB3. I'd be looking to sell A-Rich now, see if you can capitalize on value, and especially because you don't need them, and get a position or an upgrade that you might actually need. Peter, crazy thinking of starting P. Ryan over T. Don't want to risk T possibly not playing Monday night. Yeah, I think if there's still uncertainty with T. Higgins going into the Chiefs game, then I think I'd be fine playing P. Ryan. If we get news, later today or tomorrow or Sunday morning that T. Higgins is like he's ready, he doesn't have an injury designation, which I don't know how possible that's going to be. But just then I would play T. Higgins. I'd be fine going with that. If we find out that he is going to play, he's suiting up, no injury designation on him, he's good to go, then I would play T. Higgins. But if you still enter into the 1:00 games with the Chiefs for P. Ryan, and we're like, he's still a game time decision, we're not necessarily sure, then yeah, I'm fine playing P. Ryan. Jamie, hey everyone, don't forget to hit that like button. Absolutely. And for everybody who's joining in late, I dropped a new intro video that everybody loves. So if you want you could rewind all the way to the beginning of this, catch the intro video, then rewind all the way back with the live. 8-Town 21, 12-team start, 12 PPR Superflex. Send Lawrence Flowers, Kenneth Walker for projected early 25 and 26 firsts. That's a lot of known value and production for a lot of not known. I think I would take Lawrence Flowers and Kenneth Walker. I feel like Lawrence himself is worth the early first, one of the early firsts. And I feel like Walker and Flowers together are worth the other first. So I would take Lawrence Flowers and Kenneth Walker in this one. I like that they're projected to be early, but at the same time, I like if this is that person's pick and now you're giving them Lawrence Flowers and Kenneth Walker, how early is that first going to be? Um, Even if it's not their pick and you're buying it from somebody who had extra picks, um, that there's a lot that could go wrong with the early first rounders, and there's not a super ton that can go wrong, I think, with Lawrence Flowers and Kenneth Walker to where their values could climb pretty dramatically over the next couple of weeks. Like if Lawrence starts to produce well, his value could shoot right back up to where it was before the season and maybe even above. Flowers seems very secure. Kenneth Walker just seems like he just needs to come back from injury and his value will go back up. So there's a lot of, I think, even if you waited a month to see if these guys' values either get back to where they were or higher, I think you could still get 2 first round picks for all 3 of these guys in a month. Is kind of how I view it. So I would still take the 3 players. Is the Jets running back room a legit committee now? It sure seems that way. This is, I mean, Brees has had still like very solid volume numbers. Like he had 16 carries last night and 5 receptions, 21 total touches, which is crazy. And then so Braelon had one. Is this the right one? No, this is week 1. I looked at the wrong week. So last night Braelon had 16 carries and 4 receptions, so he had 20 touches. He's had 20 plus. Brees Hall has had 20 plus touches every single week. He had 21 in week 1, 21 in week 2, and 20 last night. It's just that Braelon last night then had 14 touches, 11 carries, 3 receptions. But I feel like a lot of that is also just due to the fact that they were up almost immediately and they were up for the large majority of the game anyway. But I do think that Braelon has sneaky flex value, like standalone flex value. But I wouldn't go as far as to say this is just like a committee. Like it's like when I hear the word committee, I think it's like a 50-50 split. There's no real clear one. Maybe there is kind of a clear one, but the other two kind of gets involved almost nearly as much, 50-50, 55-45. I don't see that yet with Brees Hall. I mean, like I just said, he had 20 plus touches every single week so far. He's topped 80 total yards every single week. Actually, he was at 90 or more in week 1 and week 2. Last night he just had 83 yards. He scored a touchdown all 3 weeks. Brees Hall is still fantastic. He's still a top 5 guy. It's just Braelon has seemed to elevated himself to top 36, top 30. So I wouldn't go as far as to say it's just a flat out full blown committee, but because Brees Hall is still fantastic, but Braelon at least has elevated himself. And maybe this is a product of the offense getting better with Aaron Rodgers and Braelon himself just being really good and efficient with the touches that he's getting. Drew, Pittman and Kareem Hunt for Godwin. Which side? I will take Godwin on this one. Even in Dynasty, I'm fine with trading Pittman for Godwin. But even if this is redraft, then I'm definitely taking the Godwin side. But I will assume it's Dynasty because this is a Dynasty channel. But I'll still take Godwin. Jamie, played Dortch. Lions allow 28 points per game to the slot. Wide receiver is the highest in the league. There you go. How much of that was Cooper Kupp in week 1? There you go, Mr. Boldo. Played Dortch. Mark, who do you think I could realistically trade Ramondre Stevenson for? I hate these questions so much. These are like my least favorite questions, for sure. Just because I could give you 17 different answers, and I feel like none of them could be realistic. You could have 3 of them. Is this Dynasty or redraft? I think is the other question, Mark. If you're still in here, I'll check out. I'm going to go to a couple other questions. If you have a little bit extra context for this, would be greatly appreciated. Then I'll come back to you. Country Time 10. Are Purdy and Herbert still rock solid long-term assets? Went to buy low on one of them. Darnold early second, late second, and projected late first for Purdy. Would add Mason and B-Rob to package to get Herbert. Would make my quarterback room Purdy or Herbert, Watson, Winston, Stidham. 10 team. Yikes. You need a quarterback. That's for sure. I I think there's a difference between their production now and then their production long term. Herbert is still going to be fantastic in terms of a long term asset. He is amazing. There's nothing to question there. It's just how long do we have to wait before Harbaugh gets fired or Greg Roman gets fired, and they turn back towards Justin Herbert as the primary leader of this offense? Because right now, through 2 weeks, he is not. And that's kind of the issue with getting Herbert now. Now, I would assume based on your quarterback room that you have right now that you are currently not a contender. So I would like to buy Justin Herbert. I just feel like you're packaging a ton of it's difficult because you're packaging a lot of kind of meh assets, but they're also a lot of potentially like valuable assets to you as a rebuilder. There are temporary assets like Darnold and Mason. I really like Brian Robinson, but as a rebuilder, I wouldn't. You can sell a running back early second, late second, a first. That's just I don't know if those are enough assets to even get to Justin Herbert right now. Like if I saw all those assets on one side and just Justin Herbert, I'd be like, why would I trade Justin Herbert for all this kind of nothing right now? Is the way that I would view it. More assets on a trade honestly makes that side look worse. Especially, the more that you're doing, 3-for-1, 4-for-1, 5-for-1, that just makes your trade offer look worse. So it might not even get accepted to do that for Herbert. I would still pay that for Brock. I would pay that for Brock Purdy, but I don't love it because, again, you're still doing the same 4-for-1. I don't even know if that gets accepted for Brock Purdy, just because it's just a bunch of assets and picks, and you got to wait 2 years for that first-round pick that is projected to be late. 2 other seconds. And I understand maybe you don't have a lot of assets right now, and then you got to try and package a bunch of these things together for one good asset. So, like, I would still pay that for Purdy. I would still pay that for Justin Herbert, but I just don't know, A, if they get done, and B, that they're the most optimal things to do for your roster, depending on where you're at. I don't really know if I helped you with answering that, but that's just kind of where I see it with both of these potential offers. Joe, 12-team Superflex start 10 and have Richardson and Lawrence. My wide receiver room is stacked. Yes, it is. Another owner has Caleb, Baker, Kyler, Daniels. Hold tight with my quarterback room and try to flip a wide receiver for a quarterback. How can you flip? How can you pivot from Richardson to Kyler, or pivot from Lawrence to Daniels or Caleb? Those would be my questions. I would not just go and target that guy and be like, hey, I'll give you Garrett Wilson for Kyler Murray or something like that. And then you would have Kyler, Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence, and you'd be down one wide receiver. I'd rather see what you could do to pivot and side grade from Richardson to Kyler, or Lawrence to Baker or Caleb or Daniels, and see what that gets you. Honestly, it might not be using any of those wide receivers. Maybe it's just with a pick or something like that. Anthony Richardson in a second. Does that get you Kyler? I'd rather do that than give up a wide receiver. Those are the questions that I would be looking to explore. Mark, all right, we're back. Redraft, sorry, have PPR. No, it's all good, all good. To make it easier, do you think I could trade Stevenson for someone like Zach Moss, or would I have to go much lower? I would take Stevenson over Zach Moss. And honestly, your time to sell Stevenson probably was before last night, just because he was coming off of 2 really good games. And you probably needed to sell him before not before he got exposed, but before the offense got exposed. But I still really, really like Ramondre Stevenson. I would rather have him than Zach Moss. We can look at the 4-for-4 trade calculator that we have on the site just to kind of see. You would think for how often I'm on here, I would know where all these things are. Trade evaluator. I'm much better at navigating DLF. Ramondre is in here right next to, so I'll just read the names that are 3 above him are Metcalf, Kittle, and Ayuk. The 3 below him are Olave, Monty, Laporta, and Josh Jacobs is apparently below him on here too, and ETN. So I don't know if you're going to get that high with Ramondre, especially at the running back position. Maybe you could still get Jacobs. I would love that. If you could trade Ramondre for Jacobs, I would love that. Maybe you could buy low on Joe Mixon right now for the because of the injury. Maybe you could buy Brian Robinson still. I would take Brian Robinson. Maybe you could buy low on Kenneth Walker while he's hurt. I feel like those are pretty solid options. I feel like those are realistic options, and but also options that I would like to sell Stevenson for. So I don't know how what you think about any of those names, or if they're even realistic to go out and get. But those would buy low on Mixon, buy low on Walker while they're hurt. See if you can buy Brian Robinson instead. I would flip Ramondre for Brian Robinson. Trying to see if there's anybody else on here. Yeah, when you get down into the Zach Moss range, Moss and Mostert, Jerome Ford, I think that's too low for Stevenson. Maybe you get Tony Pollard. Pollard has really good workhorse usage right now. Those I would rather look for those names with Stevenson than going down to the Zach Moss range. Got to scroll back up. I'm going through everybody in order as much as I can. So you might, if you're just asking questions now, you might take a hot minute to get to you, but I do go through all of them. So that's a PSA to anybody who's new here. Just got to go down through order, and I talk a lot, so it takes some time. Jared traded Devonta and Purdy for Worthy, 25 first and a 26 second. Is it a bad trade? I feel like you could have gotten more. I wouldn't say that it's a bad trade. I think you just left some meat on the bone. I think Purdy himself is worth a first and second, and then I would take Devonta Smith over Xavier Worthy. Brock Purdy is worth the first and second, and then I would take Devonta over Worthy. Purdy Worthy rhyme. But I don't think it's a bad trade. Like if you want to say that Purdy was worth the first, I would still take Purdy over the first, and then Devonta for Worthy in a second sounds a little bit better. But I would still take Devonta Smith. But again, like I just said, like you're not out by all that much. Like it might just be another, maybe it's a 25 second added onto this would bridge the gap a little bit better. But I do think that you just left a little bit of meat on the bone. But I don't think it was a bad trade. Just maybe a little left over. Benjamin, what's up, man? 12-team Superflex PPR start 10 tight end premium. What kind of cost do you see Bryce Young at right now? Perhaps he starts later or somewhere else next year. Need quarterback depth. I don't want Bryce Young at all. Maybe if you throw a third round pick, but I don't know if the person who has Bryce Young wants to sell for a third. I feel like if I had Bryce, I've been pretty adamantly out on Bryce Young over the past 2 weeks, saying to sell him for almost anything that you can get. But I think if I had Bryce Young, I don't think I would sell him for a third. Kind of be like holding on to Justin Fields, you know? Like when we knew that he was when the Bears were gonna draft Caleb anyway, before he went to the Steelers, like there was no incentive to sell him for a third at that point. So I wouldn't. If you could buy Bryce Young for a third, then sure, but I wouldn't pay a second for him, and definitely am not paying a first for him. So that's the price point that I view Bryce at right now. Additionally, I think we're going to pull the trigger on that Tyreek BTJ for Rice and Pittman deal. Yeah, it's unfortunate that he didn't take Addison for that, or that you couldn't find that there. Because I was looking at that, I was literally staring at my screen for like a solid 5 minutes at like trying to figure out and putting the pieces together of the puzzle, and I just could not put it together without knowing his roster either. I don't mind this deal. Like I would take Rashee Rice over Tyreek. And it sucks moving BTJ, but at least you're getting Michael Pittman back, which might be a solid buy low for him if he were to start producing again. I feel like BTJ and Pittman are pretty even in terms of Pittman starting to slide and BTJ's ascending, so they're at an even point right now. But I want Rashee Rice, and I think that's a good. I think that's a good trade for your roster too. So I like that. Dynasty start 2 out of James Cook, James Conner, and James Etienne. We couldn't get 3 Jameses on here. James Cook, James Conner, Travis Etienne. Crap. So we'll pull up John Paulson's rankings again. My gut feeling on this is to sit. Etienne, but I don't know if I want to do that. James Cook is his RB7. James Conner is his RB14, and ETN is his RB10. Nice. Connor's matchup is the worst of the three. Cook has an excellent matchup against the Jaguars and he's had a bell cow volume over the past couple of weeks. So I think you just have to start him. And then in terms of ETN versus Connor, Buffalo is not the greatest matchup for a running back. They're pretty average. Connor's matchup against the Lions is pretty solid. They're 8th right now against the running back position. But he has Connor and ETN split by 0.3 fantasy points. I think I would play James Conner. He seems to have more confidence in terms of his volume and workload than ETN's, because like we saw in week 1, like Bigsby wasn't an issue last week, but we saw in week 1 that Peterson has no issue going right over to tank Bigsby. If ETN and their offense is bad, Arizona's offense just seems a lot better. I think I would play James squared, and sit ETN, but if you were leaning towards ETN, I'm not against it either. I think James Cook is your lock, and I would play James Connors in a second. If you have both Breece and Braelon Allen, do you start both? I think that is more of a question of what other running backs do you have with Braelon Allen for that decision, because you're starting Breece Hall every single week. That's obvious, but if you're debating between Braelon Allen or Jaylen Warren, or Braelon Allen and Gus Edwards, or Braelon Allen and Chuba Hubbard, or anybody like that, then that starts getting very interesting to start Braelon Allen. I'm not scared to start both of them. They both produced very well, at least in terms of Braelon's expectations coming into last night. So if you're debating between him and some other running backs in that kind of range, like I just mentioned, I don't have a problem with starting both guys. You're not going to have ever a decision of starting Breece Hall. But it just does come down to what decision do you have with Braelon. And if Braelon's the best player, then Braelon's the best player. Monty owner's looking to sell. What would you pay for David Montgomery? I don't know if this is okay. So I'm assuming by your most recent question of who's a solid buy low running back candidate to target with some long-term value for a contender. If this is kind of the same, I'll bundle these two questions together. David Montgomery would have made that list for a nice, cheaper running back for a contender that you could buy. I think that maybe a second, or maybe it's 2 seconds, or a second and a third for David Montgomery, I think could get it done. In that similar range, I think James Conner's in there. I think Najee could even be in there too. Maybe you look at temporarily buying Jordan Mason just to see what happens over the next few weeks, because McCaffrey could be out until week 8, 9, or 10, even potentially. So if you get Mason, at least for that amount of time, that could potentially be a win. Stevenson was on that list. Did I see a question? I did see a question, maybe. Did I miss it? Yeah, Trax asked it down in here. Before yesterday's games, would you have traded Stevenson for 2 seconds? I probably would not have, unless you're rebuilding. So as a contender, if you can buy Stevenson for this exact price, then I would do that, JS. Pollard is another good one too. Similar range. Maybe you could buy low on Joe Mixon right now with his injury. Maybe Brian Robinson. I will always prop up Brian Robinson for this kind of second roundish price. Zach Moss, maybe you don't even need to pay. You'll probably need to pay a second, but you might get Zach Moss plus for that second, or kind of the same thing with Aaron Jones. So maybe I don't know, J.K. Dobbins for a second could be interesting. Could be an interesting conversation if Dobbins has elevated himself up into this kind of back end RB2 range. Maybe a second gets it done. Especially the team who had Dobbins is more of a rebuilder, and they were hoping for exactly this moment that Dobbins does well to then sell him. Maybe they'll be interested in a second. That could be. BJ got a first for Monty, and it's in a 1 quarterback league. So if it is a late contender first in a 1 quarterback league, that is more or less an early second in a super flex league. if that is what it is. So, but yeah, that's kind of I think Monty rides the gap of that first and second round value that depending, maybe it's in a super flex league, you sell your contender first for Monty and a 26 second or something like that. 27 second, to kind of move that gap a little bit. Lots of questions. I got to go faster. Bear with me, guys. I appreciate you. Nick, would you start Tank Dell or Drake London this week in half PPR? I would start Drake London. I'm not uber confident in that, but I would start Drake London. To back up with Paulson's rankings, he has London wide receiver 21. He has Tank Dell wide receiver 34. So Paulson agrees. Jamar Chase anytime touchdown is plus 120. So bet that for free money versus the Commanders. Would you also bet 2+ touchdowns at 850? I'd probably sprinkle like 0.1 units on the 2 touchdowns. I probably would. I mean, especially if T. Higgins is out. I like that. The Commanders defense is awful. I feel like that anytime touchdown just does feel like a win. And I would probably sprinkle something on that plus 850, Start Deontay with Dalton or Brian Thomas against the Bills. Great question. I'll go. I think you have to play Brian Thomas Jr. just because of there's been zero confidence with Deontay Johnson. Now, with Andy Dalton, that could change. And they do play Vegas, which is a solid defense too. The Bills have been excellent on the outside against wide receivers. I don't feel confident starting Brian Thomas against the Bills, especially with the way that the Jags offense is played. So I don't love starting BTJ, but I think I would just start him over Deontay anyway, because Deontay has not done anything even remotely close to giving me confidence of starting him, even with the potential change at quarterback. Not the potential change of quarterback, but like his potential with the change of quarterback, I should say. I think you got to start BTJ, but I'm not expecting a lot. I think if you get 7 fantasy points out of BTJ, that's kind of a win. And to, again, with Paulson's rankings, BTJ is wide receiver 25. Deontay Johnson is wide receiver 31. So they're not separated by a whole ton. It is one full fantasy point, but they're not separated by a ton. Yeah, BTJ, 6th hardest matchup against the Bills this week. They're 6th right now. So I don't love it, but I think you just got to go BTJ. David, 12-team Superflex, start 10, full PPR. What moves to make started 0-2? Man, with Lamb, Amon-Ra, Waddle, you probably didn't start Shaheed either week. That would be I mean, I don't blame you. I wouldn't have started Shaheed either. I would definitely not have started Shaheed in week 1, and then I would have like, I don't know if he's gonna catch lightning in a bottle for the second week in a row. I think what I would do is I would try to focus my attention on upgrading the QB2 spot. I would move Lamb, Amon-Ra, and Waddle aside, but how can I use Pacheco, Zeke, Chuba, Bucky, Ladd, use Shaheed right now? And how can I upgrade Watson? Even if you got to do, I'll give you Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, Isaiah Pacheco, and you give me X. Maybe it's Watson and Pacheco get you Tua. I don't know, probably not. But like, can you buy low on Tua right now for the injury discount? Can you go out and just get Brock Purdy? Can you go up and get Trevor Lawrence because he's struggling? Can you go get Justin Herbert? Like, how can you upgrade at the quarterback position to then try to upgrade again later on down the road if their value goes up? I think that you got to start looking at shaving down your running back room, send Zeke off, send Chuba off before Brooks gets back. Maybe get rid of Gus if you possibly can. Get rid of Parkinson for a team that needs a tight end. Those would be the even honestly get rid of Shaheed if somebody's willing to pay something good for him. But I would see how can you take advantage of other players that have gotten injured right now and contenders that have those players that might need some instant points now. You know, that would be what I would be looking at trying to do, and then build towards 2025. Shed the age, get lean, buy low on players for next year, and already start looking. AJ is a contender with two 2025 firsts. One is his own. One we'll call mid from somebody else. The guy who's in a full rebuild offered me Brooks for my late first. My running backs are Bijan, then Javante, Moss, Singletary. Interesting that he's already ready to re-roll the dice on a running back that is also very young. Two interesting schools of thought come to mind for this one. I would take Jonathan Brooks over your late 2025 first. So from a value standpoint, I would take Jonathan Brooks. Now, the opposite side of that is asking yourself, is that the best use as a contender for your late first round pick? That first might be better served to go get you a guy that is actually going to help you produce, because it does seem like you have a need with Javante, Moss, and Singletary as you're fighting for your RB2. Bijan's fantastic. But it seems like if you could lock down a good RB2, that could just elevate your chances of winning this year. And is Jonathan Brooks that? I don't know for 2024, just because, like I said, like he's coming back from the ACL. He might get, even if he's back and active, how involved is he going to be into the offense? Is he going to need some sort of a 2, 3, 4 week buildup to get into more of a workload and playing significant snaps? Then we got to talk about what his production is going to look like in the worst offense in the NFL. There is a lot of unknownness for Brooks that maybe he just gets added into being, a Zach Moss or a Devin Singletary production wise for 2024. That maybe you could have used that first in a different way. And I think that is a secondary question. So maybe you tabled the Jonathan Brooks for a late first, and maybe you go out and try to see if you could buy, or maybe you go buy Jonathan Brooks, and then maybe you could buy Brian Robinson for a second, or like I said, David Montgomery or Najee or Pollard or somebody else that could fill the production gap in your RB2 now. And then you've got Jonathan Brooks waiting in the wings, hopefully in 2025 with hopefully a better offense, or at least in a situation where he's fully healthy and is still getting good volume. And it may not be the greatest of offenses, but at least the volume and his talent and his health are allowing him to still score fantasy points in 2025. You just need to fix that hole for 2024. So that's the two ways that I would be looking at that to kind of see which direction that you want to go in ultimately, and how to use that first as a contender now. Ace 14 team Superflex, start 10 offense, 6 defense, trade Tyreek for Nico. I'm taking Nico so easily. I'm taking Nico. Yep, absolutely. Back to my Anthony Richardson question. I'd like to do Goff and JSN. Issue is I played the Goff JSN owner this week. Oh, well. It doesn't really matter to me ultimately. You give them Anthony Richardson, sir. That's great. But you got Kyler, you got Josh Allen. You might have just added Jackson Smith and Jigba to your lineup. If that's a win for you, dynasty wise, and you want to make that move, I wouldn't be concerned about what that does to one matchup 1 week. So make the move if you can this week, even though you're playing against them. John's been trying to buy Nico in all my leagues and I have been able to. And is his price right up with Neighbors now? I might still I would take Nico Collins over Malik Neighbors personally. The reason being CJ Stroud over Daniel Jones, or over insert rookie quarterback in 2025 here. Neighbors is great because he's 4 years younger, probably maybe more talented. I think their talent level is pretty comparable. But Neighbors wins with age. Nico wins with situation and quarterback. So I would still slightly take Nico. They're in the same tier. I would take Nico over Malik Neighbors, but yeah, that's me personally. I think if people still take Neighbors, that Nico is not too far behind. Steve, good morning. In need of a tight end. Should I drop Corum, Pirine, Hill, or Spears with Evan Ingram out? I would drop. I'm fine with dropping Justice Hill, because I think I want to see what Pirine does. If Pollard were to get hurt, Spears would be fantastic. If Kyron were to get hurt, Corum would be fantastic. If Derrick Henry were to get hurt, I'm not sure Justice Hill, like, he would be like a valued, um, he'd be on all the waiver wire shows as the number one waiver wire pickup of the week if Derrick Henry were to get hurt. But I don't know if if his ceiling is as high as Corum if Kyron were to get hurt, or Spears if Pollard were to get hurt. So I would be willing to drop Justice Hill. And if Derrick Henry if Derrick Henry doesn't get hurt this week, Evan Ingram comes back next week, then just drop that tight end for Justice Hill again. I'm fine with that. I also have a trade request of Carr for Justice Hill with Tua on IR and Richardson as my starter. I would take Derek Carr and then trade Richardson for a tight end. That makes things more difficult, though. Cop out. Could you just drop Tua, put somebody else on IR if you have an extra IR guy on your bench? And then I would take Carr over Justice Hill with the way that he's been playing right now. And then I guess drop Corum for a tight end for need be this week. And lastly, with AJ Brown out and Pittman not meeting expectations, who should I start this week? Jameson Williams. I like JSN though too, but I would start Jameson Williams out of this whole group. What would it take on top of Andrews to get Brock Bowers? I offered the Bowers owner Andrews a first and a second. He said no. If that's already a no, I'm not paying more. I would not pay Andrews and 2 firsts for Brock Bowers. So no, not worth it. Should we be trying to move off of Jordan Mason now, or wait and see if his value rises, or just run with him as a stud in my starting lineup until his time is up? I don't think his value is going to rise any more than what it is right now. And honestly, because of he's a running back, he has the ability to lose value. Like if he were to get hurt and he himself were to go on IR, and then now it's like he's kind of back the same time that Christian McCaffrey's back or CMC's back earlier, then you just lost all that Jordan Mason value. So I think Mason is at his value peak right now, because I think most people know that he's a temporary asset. Now, whether or not as a contender, if it makes sense to sell him for a second, I feel like that's kind of it kind of is like a personal decision, also maybe a lineup decision based on what your alternatives are. I have 2 rosters with Jordan Mason that I'm just letting him ride. I haven't really been offered anything in either leagues for Jordan Mason, but if I were to get like a second for him in my inbox, I'd probably just let Jordan Mason ride on my team and just let him help win. Let him help me win matchups as long as Christian McCaffrey is out. So that's the way I view it. If you want to, I think cashing out for a second makes total sense as well, especially if you just kind of had Jordan Mason, but you still have other players that are very much productive right now, and you want to cash out on the temporary value, then I think a second makes sense, or a second and third, 2 seconds, whatever it is. But if you're not really getting any offers, or you're not getting anything fantastic when you are trying to send him out, then I'm not really worried about it. I'll just let him die, quote unquote, die on my team as a contender. Down tier from a Lamar idea. You have Allen as your other quarterback in Superflex. I don't love tearing down from Lamar. Why wouldn't you just rather have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? I don't like any of those options. I'd rather have Lamar over. Who's Reese? I don't know who Reese is, but I don't like any of the other ones. I need a lot more. I want to go down from Lamar. I don't really want to go down from Lamar to Love. I'm fine with Dak, but I don't like DJ Moore. I'd love to go down to Kyler, but I don't know if they're willing to do that. I don't want to go to Anthony Richardson. Daniel seems like a little bit too far. So I don't like the options that you've presented. I'd rather just keep Lamar. I don't understand why you just don't want Lamar. Drew, Superflex start 11 wide receivers. Would you trade Brooks for Zay? No. Do you have to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 startable wide receivers right now, and I get to start 11, but you have 6 wide receivers. You have 3 running backs that you could start right now too. There's 9. Then your 2 other. You don't even start a tight end. No, I would keep Jonathan Brooks over Zay Flowers. There's no reason to. Need another start. Dale needs another starter. Wide receiver room is weak. I would like to not use Lamar as the way to do it. I get it, but like I want a better. I'd rather just have the quarterback. I don't want to mortgage Lamar just to fill in a wide receiver spot. Is the way, and I think that you went too low with the wide receivers packagings with Love and Burrow. Dak and DJ Moore was the closest one for me of the three, but I'm just not a huge DJ Moore fan with Caleb Williams right now. George has Kittle, but he may not play. If I pick up Gesicki up, who should I drop? Trey Benson or Blake Corum? Probably Corum. Yeah. And you throw Kittle in your IR spot and then pick up somebody for free if he's announced out. But I would probably drop Corum. Experts are saying start London over Amari Cooper, but I love Cooper this week. He's had a ton of targets and just hasn't clicked. He's due for a big game against a horrible team. I don't disagree. Paulson has Amari as 35 and London as what I say 21. Yeah, I don't disagree. Paulson has a 3-point per game difference between 2.5 point per game difference between the two, but Amari has the drastically better matchup. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with playing Amari over Drake London this week. Is Jalen Wright worth a pickup? I think he is, but I think he's in a similar boat as Benson and Blake Corum if this is the same league. So I think he's worth an add, but he might just be one of those guys that you add on Sunday just to drop on Tuesday, see how injuries play out, and then maybe you pick up again on the following Sunday just in case of an injury. Country Time's a contender, won ship last year and am loaded at other spots. I think you missed Hurts being in my QB room. Oh, I definitely did miss Hurts. I apologize. Purdy owner is in full rebuild, and the Herbert owner is a legit contender, but I started the year 0-4. Yikes. Needs running back help and is Christian McCaffrey owner too. Okay. Yes, I did miss Hurts in your room. I'm sorry. Where was it? I think I read your QB room hurts, as in like your QB room is bad. Because you have Watson, Winston, Stidham, and then you were trying to buy Purdy and Herbert. So yes, I think that's maybe what I read, and not that was Jalen Hurts. So okay, reframing. Yeah, I did miss Hurts. So Purdy, Herbert would be QB2. Purdy again. I would still do both of those trades. I just don't know how much it necessarily helps you with production right now because Herbert and Deshaun Watson are not all that dissimilar. And then Purdy and Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is the QB 13 right now. And Justin Herbert's the QB 26. And Purdy's the QB 18. So technically Watson is outproducing the two players that you would like to buy. Now, granted, dynasty value, I'd much rather have both of those quarterbacks over Deshaun Watson. But from a production standpoint, yeah, so I would pay both of those for Purdy or Herbert. I'm fine with that. And if it helps you long term, then you have Watson filling in your production. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm cool with both of them. Any long term outlook on Jordan Mason if looking to buy as a contender? I don't really view any long term outlook with Jordan Mason. Christian McCaffrey's still on the team for the next 3 years, and I doubt they trade him. They most definitely don't cut him. The only way that Jordan Mason has long term upside is if McCaffrey like medically retires, which I don't think is happening. Like if he were to, or if he were to actually like tear his Achilles, which like all the wood in the world knocking on, then I could see Jordan Mason being the starter going into next year. But I think if McCaffrey were to actually tear his Achilles at some point this year, I don't know if Jordan Mason goes in the guaranteed starter in 2025. I would venture to guess that they might look at somebody in the draft. They might look at somebody in free agency. I don't view a ton of long-term upside for Jordan Mason. Again, as a contender, like if you need a running back, I'm not opposed to sending a second-round pick as a contender. I'm also not opposed to selling Mason for a second. I think that's a pretty fair deal on both sides. But I don't know if there is any long-term upside unless something drastic happens to Christian McCaffrey. Do you think Kyron will have a 100-yard game soon? If my calculations are correct, he'll need 40 carries a game to hit that. Dude, he just got obliterated by the by all of the injuries on the offense. It's just so bad. Where does Paulson have him ranked this week? He's got him ranked at RB12. San Fran so far been kind of against the running back position. Maybe it happens this week. And hey, with Kupp and Puka out, maybe he gets 40 carries. Yeah, Benjamin, I think that's worth a shot. See if you can get him to add a second at some point. Adam, start 2, Zamir, Jennings, Wandale, Lockett. I think you got to start Zamir and Jennings. Again, if you can't start Zamir White this week against the Panthers, you're never going to be able to start him. And Jennings with Debo out, I think is a okay play over the other two. JS, we already hit on this. Monty or Najee this week? I'll go with Monty. And yeah, I'll go with Monty. I think that it's a double-edged sword with the Chargers-Steelers game, and that it might be nice to play running backs in that game, but that game might also last like 2 hours because both teams are going to run the ball 40 times, and the quarters are going to go like that. So like that game might literally last like 2 hours, and you might not get a whole bunch of plays for Najee. Whereas with I want a piece of that Cardinals Lions game, so I'd play Monty. James Cook and Pittman for AJ Brown. Give me AJ Brown in Dynasty. That's a pretty easy one. Yeah. Dynasty. Yeah. Give me AJ Brown for sure. I sold Dobbins in a second for 25 first, early to mid, super flex. See, people get crazy. People be getting crazy. Give me the first. What would you add on top of Deontay to acquire Diggs in a 12-team super flex dynasty? I would like to pay like a second seems like an easy answer. I would not add a first because I'm not even paying a first for Diggs straight up, let alone adding Deontay to it. I don't know how much Deontay adds to it. So maybe it's a second, third, and Deontay. Maybe it's 2 seconds. But I feel like if you start the offer as Deontay in a second for Diggs, that might be a good starting point. Maybe you need to see what happens with Dalton this week. Or maybe you don't want to see what happens with Dalton. Maybe you're trying to do this before Sunday anyway. But I don't think there's a lot of downside for waiting to see what Dalton could be waiting to see what Deontay could be with Andy Dalton this week to see if that changes his value positively. Because I don't think it super negatively would affect him if he didn't produce with Dalton this week. Because I feel like his dynasty value is already shot. And now you're just hoping that Dalton flips the script. So maybe you wait till Sunday, and then maybe it is a second. But like I said, second and third. Second and Deontay and something else fun could be where you go. I'm a contender, but no one will let me buy a running back like Jacobs Conner. I wouldn't want to buy Zamir White anyway. But anyway, would you overpay by a lot for their production or rock with Zamir Javonte Steele as my RB2? What is an overpay? Like, is a first for Jacobs an overpay? Because I would pay a first for Jacobs. I would pay a first for Travis Etienne. I wouldn't pay it first for Connor or B-Rob. But if it was like Zamir White and 2 seconds for Robinson or Connor, then I would probably do that. I think it depends on what the overpay actually is. Because if it's 2 firsts for Josh Jacobs, then yeah, that's an overpay. I'm not doing that. But if it's just like 1 first or a first and a third for Josh Jacobs, then I would do that for Jacobs. Steven, looking for week 3 advice. Full PPR need to fill wide receiver and 2 flex spots. Pickens, Najee, Demarcus Robinson, McConkey, Carson Steele, Rico Gross. How's this not the 2 Steelers? I think this is on talent alone. I think it's just Pickens and Najee. I think it has to be those 2 just on talent. I get that it's probably not ideal to play both those guys and be invested into the Steelers offense that can't score like more than once if they even score in a game. Woes of being a Steelers fan. And then I'm not starting McConkey this week. I wouldn't start Rico or Chase Brown. They're not really in consideration. So between Robinson and Steele, I think I would then play Steele for some volume upside because I don't know if Robinson necessarily gets it done, even with Puka and Kupp out. I just don't know what the Rams offense is. Like, if they can't sustain drives, then that's not good. If they're just constantly going 3 and out, they're not going to have enough plays for Robinson to be a good starter. So I think I would go with Pickens as your wide receiver and then Najee and Carson Steele as your 2 starters. And to kind of back that up, Paulson has Pickens as the flex 62. He has Steele as the flex 65. He has Najee as the flex 54. DeMarcus is the flex 79. Ladd is the flex 80. And I'm not looking up Rico and Chase Brown because they're low. So, yes, he agrees with me. Paulson agrees with me to start the 2 Steelers and Carson Steele, Steven. The 2 Steelers and Steele. Boom. Start all of the Steele. Are you starting Watson or Herbert this week? I'm leaning on Watson because of the matchup. I'll start Watson this week. Did you know Richardson has more interceptions than touchdowns versus man coverage? I did see that tweet, actually. I did see that stat. That's a yikes. Deontay trade value in Dynasty if he shows out with a red rifle, looking for running back in a PPR 1 quarterback. I think you're hoping that at best, if you were to come out and put up like 6-7 receptions for 80 to 90 yards, I think that is like a really good best case scenario. Then I think at best, you're hoping that he gets back into being a 2nd round pick. I think you're hoping that you could turn Deontay Johnson into a Zach Moss or into a Aaron Jones or into a I wouldn't want to buy Zamir White, into maybe a Raheem Mostert. I think that's what you're hoping that Deontay kind of turns into. If you could buy Brian Robinson or Jalen Warren or even get up to like a Tony Pollard, then I think that works. I think that's best case scenario if Deontay shows out hard is where you're going to get into the, kind of that range of running backs. Jeremiah, thoughts on Zay Flowers after seeing his target share in the first few weeks? I know you weren't high on him coming into the season, but wondering if he's moved up for you. He's moved up in terms of my confidence level in him, but like from a ranking standpoint, he really hasn't moved for me. Because I still view him as this kind of like back end dynasty wide receiver too. There's just other wide receivers I think that still have more upside. That's my issue with Zay Flowers, is that I just don't view a ton of upside with him. He's a PPR kind of guy, and that's great, but the volume I don't think is going to be consistently there on a weekly basis. This has been through 2 weeks. But in week 1, he didn't do all that. He had under 10 fantasy points on 10 targets in week 1. Last week did a lot more with it. Scored the touchdown, had a big play to get, to average more than 10 yards per reception. So that was great. But I just don't know if that happens consistently every single week. Like I would still, I would take Devonta Smith over him. I would still take Roma Dunze over him. I would take DK Metcalf over him. I would take Brian Thomas Jr. over him. I would take George Pickens. It's probably in the same range. T. Higgins, if he was healthy, is probably in the same range. JSN was really, really fun. If JSN's production, like what happened in week 2, not even what happened in week 2 continues, but if JSN continues to be a big part of the Seahawks offense, like how Flowers is part of the Ravens offense, then I think that you have a conversation there. Pittman's struggling, but he's still like, I know what Michael Pittman is still. Worthy would be really interesting on the come up. You've got Chris Godwin now on the come up. Like there are still a lot of names that have shifted, I think, above and below Zay Flowers enough to where Zay Flowers himself hasn't necessarily moved in my rankings. I would still take Ayuk over him. I would still, for now, take London over him. I would still take Waddle over him. For now, I would still take Chris Olave over him. Those names could change. But like I said, like I feel like he's just kind of, he's stayed still in my rankings, whereas other players have kind of gone up and down above him. But my confidence level in Zay Flowers has definitely risen to the point where if he does it, if he continues to do what he's done over the past 2 weeks and does it consistently over the next 2 to 3 weeks, then he's going to be rising up to probably being a top 15 dynasty wide receiver. So like I'm ready to start moving him up. I'm just haven't gotten there yet. Tyreek, BTJ, Braelon plus for Rice, Pittman, and 27 first. Interesting. Hold on a second. I need. He has no interest in Addison, but he's like the perfect piece. What about Ridley? Does Ridley work in there? Is he the plus? For me, I think it would be Ridley or Jordan Addison. Final offer sent my way. 26 second. Okay, that works too. I would take this. I think this is a better trade than just Pittman and Rice. So I'd be willing to do this. He'll have no running backs. Well, you're giving him Braelon Allen, Benjamin. You're giving him Braelon Allen. No, I agree. I understand. I would take that deal the way it is right now. I like it a lot. Nick was offered Polk and Dulcich for Chubb. I'm rebuilding, but don't want to just trade Chubb just to trade him. No, I mean, I would take Jalen Polk over Nick Chubb right now. I do understand that like you're on the cusp of Nick Chubb coming back to where if this guy who's trying to buy Chubb is like, oh, I need a running back, maybe I can buy low on Chubb, and it works as a rebuilder that you take on Jalen Polk. I think that value makes sense. And if you wanted to wait for Nick Chubb just to see what happens, then you can, because his value probably could only really go up from here. I don't know if I necessarily just want to see what I don't know if I want to see Nick Chubb struggle on his first couple of weeks back from major knee injury. Yeah, maybe I'd like Dulcich to be a better player. Even if it was like a third, I feel like that's better than Dulcich. But I don't hate it to trade him for Polk in a rebuilder. Oh yeah, I just closed that. I need prayers. My IR consists of Cup, Puka, Hawkins, CMC. Oh my goodness! If they all play, who do you start? Addison, Palmer, Yoshi. I'm so sorry, man. Some people's teams look like a freaking hospital right now, and it's so demoralizing. I'm so sorry that you're going through this. If T. Higgins is out, Yoshi Voss is like a fantastic play. If Addison plays, I think you have to play him. So I think I would go Addison and Yoshi. The way I would rank it is Yoshi, Addison, Whittington, Palmer would be how I would rank them. What does Steele have to achieve in order to be a hold? Steele versus other handcuffs. He needs to come out. I don't necessarily need to see like massive production, but I just want to see that he has a grip on the starting role over Samaje Perine. Like if he comes out and he has 14 plus touches and Perine has 6 to 8, that's all I need to see from Carson Steele to then consider him to be a hold. If he has more than that, then I think he could start entering the sell category, or maybe it's a more confident hold as the RB1 for the Chiefs for the next 8 weeks potentially. That could be massive if he has that kind of an upside. That could be massive. But I think just for him to be a hold, I just need to see that he has a firm grip on the RB1. What it would be. Internet just popped up. I don't know if I'm having rough internet right now. Can you guys, Carlos, I don't want you to miss this chat. Can you guys still hear me or see me? Am I freezing? Am I breaking up? Good time to hydrate. A little fuzzy. Okay. My internet has had this like pockets of loss. It's like pocket loss. Weird. I mean, I'll wait it out. I'll just fill in. Because I don't want Carlos to miss this. And hopefully we caught the Carson Steele stuff as long as he has a firm grip on the RB1 role. Okay, we're off. All right. Weird. Sorry. I didn't want Carlos to miss anything. I didn't want to be fuzzy and then have to reiterate anything like that. So Carlos, thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate you so much, my man. Give up Kyron and a first from Malik Neighbors. Oh my gosh, yes, please. Even if you're assuming that it's a late first, but even if it's like a mid to early first, I would still smash the crap out of this. Give me Malik Neighbors so hard. I don't really care what it leaves you with for the running back position. This is just such a fantastic move from a dynasty perspective. You still have Mason and Brian. You have a bunch of guys that I like as like good RB2s right now. You got your hero RB and Bijan Robinson. Just a fantastic way to go out and buy him. Come on, internet. And yeah, I love it. I love it so much just to go out and get Malik Neighbors. So thank you for the $5 super chat, and please buy Malik Neighbors. Boop, doop, boop, boop. All right. As my internet hopefully resets itself, I will try to find where I left off. What would you pay to buy Neighbors right now? That's a funny. Kyron and a first, exactly what I would pay. That's 2 firsts for sure. I would pay to buy Malik Neighbors, or if it's some player that is valued as a first, and then you got to add a first to him. I would pay, Jalen Waddle in a first, Drake London in a first, Brandon Ayuk in a first, Chris Olave in a first, like all that right now. I would pay to go buy Malik Neighbors. He looks fantastic. So hopefully that helps. Someone keeps asking to buy Rice off of me. Am I crazy that I turned down 2 mid first? No, I don't think so. I think Rice is he's not. I would take Malik Neighbors over Rashee Rice, but like they're very, very close. I think they're both very solidified, like top 12, if not even top 10. Neighbors is for sure top 10. But Rice, I think, is a solidified wide receiver 1, if not top 10 wide receiver. And I would pay 2 firsts to go buy Malik Neighbors. I would pay 2 firsts to go buy Rashee Rice. And I do not think that you're crazy for turning down 2 firsts to try to buy Rice off of you. So no, definitely not crazy. And he probably is not going to offer you any more than that. So Rashee Rice is just that good. I sold a 26 second and Willis for a 26 first because he only had 2 quarterbacks and one of them was Jordan Love. Nice. This is Dynasty 101 right here. This is perfect. This is how you take advantage of managers that are panicking. This is how you take advantage of temporary assets. You add to them, you go get something better for yourself. Even if it's a couple years down the road, that's what gets it done. A first is fantastic, dude. Well done. I don't want to answer this question. No. All right. Christian Kirk or Raheem Pearsall? My answer is still Christian Kirk, just because we have a body of work of him on 2 different teams, but especially with him on his current team right now, of really good fantasy production. I have no idea what Ricky Pearsall is. Obviously, he got shot, but then even before that, he was struggling with injuries. He hasn't played at all, so I have no idea what's going on. I will still take Christian Kirk for now. But I understand that we're going to get to a point where the scales probably tip enough to where we're probably just done with Christian Kirk and we're ready for the unknownness of Ricky Pearsall, because at least with Ricky Pearsall, maybe he is as bad as what Christian Kirk has been and might continue to be, but there is still the upside that at least Pearsall is more than that, and he's a lot younger. We're going to get to a point where those scales, I should rephrase, we hopefully do not get to a point with Christian Kirk to where those scales kind of tip and become into balance. And because of that hope that we don't get to that point, I will still take Christian Kirk. Herbert JSN, 25 top 2 pick and a 26 second versus Josh Allen and Chris Godwin. Superflex, which side are you taking? Give me Josh Allen for this one. I'm taking Josh Allen over Herbert and the top 2 pick. The top 2 pick is fantastic next year. I mean, I don't know if that is a quarterback as of right now. It probably is either Sanders or Quinn Ewers, or maybe it's Carson Beck. Maybe it's Burden or Tet. Still at the very same. I would take Josh Allen over Herbert, the top 2 pick in the second, and then Godwin for JSN. I think is a wash. So give me the best player in this deal by far in Josh Allen, and then give me the uber productive player in Chris Godwin right now. Oh, would you pay a late first for Chris Godwin as a contender? Yes, I would. I view him kind of like how I viewed Cooper Kupp kind of coming into the year. And it's funny that Chris Godwin is kind of playing the Cooper Kupp role in this Cohen offense. So I would pay a late first for Chris Godwin. This is kind of like, not to say that, in 2021, would you have paid a late first for Cooper Kupp, like in week 2 or week 3 of his massive breakout year? Obviously, in hindsight, everybody would have said yes to that. And then you would have had 2022 Cooper Kupp, at least up until he got hurt. So you have longevity there. Godwin is still relatively young-ish for the production, that if he continues this production over the next, into 2025, into 2026, that I think it'd be well worth it first as a contender. So I'll take a first-round pick for it. I would trade a first-round pick for Chris Godwin, I should say. Looking to compete next year, what should I do with Justin Herbert? I would love to pivot off of him. I would love to see if you could pivot to Dak Prescott. Can you pivot to, honestly, even like Goff or Baker Mayfield, and maybe you can get something on top of that if the other person values Herbert a little bit more, maybe as a rebuilder or as a retooler, looking more towards the future. I would love to add something to helping get Kyler Murray. I just don't know how possible that is anymore. Really, as a contender, the optimal play was to not have come into the year with Justin Herbert. I get that, his value just tanked so quickly. I have a contending team with Justin Herbert that I tried to move him for so hard. But maybe now is a good time that you could try to take advantage of somebody that has Jordan Love hurt. Maybe you trade Herbert for Love straight up. And then you can just buy a couple of weeks with a skill player in your super flex or something. Maybe it's, it's those kind of injury things that you could try to take advantage of. Or maybe the person who has Kyler has a major need at wide receiver or running back that you could then pay Herbert and your running back to move up to get Kyler. That might not be optimal, or might not seem like it's super optimal, but you get Kyler Murray, and then maybe you could fill in the running back spot with some other players or handcuffs as more injuries happen to them. So I think that's kind of where you're at, or you're just kind of more or less stuck with him, depending on how your league feels about Herbert. 12-team one quarterback, 1.5 PPR tight end premium trade likely for a 25 second in Braelon Allen. Yes, I would do that. I think I understand the Andrews insurance, but you have Brock Bowers already as probably your every week starter. So I don't really want the handcuff to my backup tight end. And I think that price is really good to trade likely for a second, and you get the upside shot on Braelon Allen too. So yeah, give me the second in Braelon. I don't think that's a bad trade whatsoever. I feel foolish for targeting Ray Davis over Braelon in rookie drafts. You feel that way now. It's a long season yet to come, so a lot could change for Ray Davis too. I don't regret it yet. You might have taken Ray Davis, and this is maybe patting myself too hard on the back, but maybe you took Ray Davis because of my recommendation from how high I was on him in rookie draft season. So yeah, for that, I do apologize for not telling you to draft Braelon Allen over Ray Davis at this point, based on what Braelon Allen's done. But I would like to say that there is still a lot of the season left that Ray Davis could turn into Braelon Allen or more over the next few weeks, and then you wouldn't feel bad in October. So there's still a lot of the season left. We'll see what goes on with both of these guys. Not that I'm dismissing Braelon Allen, but I'm just saying still hope for Ray Davis. Thoughts on buying low on Tank Bigsby and Kendre Miller? What is low? Are like a third for both these guys? I'd pay a third for both of them, but I don't know what you're buying Kendre Miller for right now, outside of him just being another handcuff. And even then, is he even the handcuff? Because Jamal Williams is looking pretty solid. Um, it's just I wasn't really on the Kendre Miller fan all year, and it seems like Dennis Allen hates him. So there is that. I don't know if you can buy Bigsby for a third. He's just a handcuff for me. So he's just no different than a bunch of other handcuffs. So sure, I would pay a third maybe for both, but I don't know if that gets it done. Maybe a fourth for Kendre Miller. I don't know if that gets it done. And do you think they can become pass catchers at all? I think Bigsby can. Kendre didn't showcase that ability in college much, so I don't know if Kendre can, but Bigsby can. He had pretty solid receiving ability in college, and he's in an offense at least, to where if he were to be the 1-for-1 replacement for ETN with ETN's pass catching ability, maybe they view Bigsby as 80 to 90% ETN, and they can dump off some stuff to him. Spears will be questionable, but expect him to be ready to roll. Pittman does not viewed to be believed to miss any does not believe that he's in any danger of missing the Bears game. He came up with a calf injury. Interesting. Sorry, I was just no Joe Mixon or Dameon Pierce. They haven't practiced at all. Looking more and more like a Cam Akers week. So there we go. Sounds like Cam Akers is going to be the lone starter. Nick, quarterbacks: Burrow, Daniels, Love, May, Darnold. How should I handle, hold, or trade? Ooh. I would love to keep Daniels. I would love to trade Darnold. I think you have to hold Drake May for now. I think Darnold is very expendable. If you could trade him for a second, that would be great. I think you just got to hold everybody else. May is 100% a hold. Love is probably a hold through the injury. Daniels is definitely a hold because I like him and I like his production. And Burrow is probably a hold because he doesn't seem like he's a guy that's like very sellable right now, because the offense has been kind of sputtering. Higgins hasn't been playing. So I feel like a lot of these guys are just kind of holds, except for Sam Darnold. I would love to sell Sam Darnold. And then, you have a really solid Burrow, Daniels, Love, and then Drake May is kind of like your project QB just to see what happens with him. I like that. I like this grouping a lot. Can you just sell off of Sam Darnold? Great. Start two, I say Eckler or Cooks. This is why we start thick questions, because they're so hard. Downs playing this week. Stupid internet. Come on, man. I'm looking up. I might still be frozen. I have no idea, but I'm looking up if Downs is even playing this week. I had somebody come out and look at the internet last week. This is so dumb. Downs was a full participant the last 2 weeks, and he probably practiced again today. I'm back. Josh Downs is Paulson's flex 159. Deontay is flex 67. Eckler is flex 68. And Cooks is flex 83. So Paulson would say Eckler and Deontay. I think you have to play Deontay this week. Again, from like a talent perspective, I feel like he's the most talented of this group. Eckler might get some receiving volume playing against Cincinnati. So I think I go with that. I don't think I trust Downs first week off of the injury. And Cooks is he's really boom bust. They do play Baltimore, so that's nice. I think if you need the upside, I would play Cooks over Eckler. But I think if you just need steady production, I would play Deontay and Eckler. I had that problem. They came to my house like 3 or 4 times, then didn't get resolved. So, dude, I'm like this close to switching to Xfinity. I wanted to switch to Xfinity when we moved to the new house, but then my old provider was like, "Oh no, don't leave. We'll give you this promotion for 2 years." So I have a promotion that is actually cheaper than Xfinity, but the service is crap. So I'm like this close to switching. So we'll see. It's funny too because I'm hooked up. The router's literally right to it via Ethernet. I didn't really have this too, so oh my god. Might be an early day. Just the fact I'm struggling by to get through the internet. What the heck, dude? Mm-hmm. I'm hardwired, Joe. I'm telling you, something's weird. I don't know. Maybe I just need to buy a new cable. I don't know. They were literally here and he like moved the router over here and everything. You can see it's coming out of the wall right there, actually. This is where my router is. And then I'm hardwired into it with a LAN cable. Literally, the cable itself is like 3 feet long. I don't know. Might be an early day. Anyway. Any other questions? So I accept Warren and a second for Dobbins. I'd probably hold on to Dobbins for that, honestly. No real reason to sell. Who holds more? I'm sorry, I'm just rapid firing these because I don't know when my internet's going to crash again. Who holds more dynasty value next season? Goddard or Akers? Goddard. Is I don't know what Akers is. What would it cost to get Murray Love from Herbert in an 8-team start 11? Superflex, I have multiple firsts and seconds. I would pay, if you could pay Herbert and a first to get Murray, I would love that. First and second to get Murray, I would love that. I don't know if I would, Herbert and multiple seconds for Love, I would do that. I don't know if I would pay Herbert and a first for Love. Maybe, but definitely for Kyler. Or yeah, Herbert and London in a second for Kyler would be fun. Herbert and heck, do Herbert, London, and a first for Kyler. I'd do that. What would you add to Garrett Wilson to get to Lamb? A first. $10 by 12, tight end premium contender. Trade away Brian Robinson to Mason and a late second for Flowers and Muth. Yeah, you definitely don't need Mason or B-Rob. I don't think that Flowers is the right guy because your issue is that you're going to add another wide receiver into this group that is very similar to T. Higgins when he comes back. He's very similar to DJ Moore right now, very similar to Pickens, potentially very even similar to Amari if you were to actually start clicking. You would have a lot of wide receivers that are very, very similar. And maybe that's okay as a stepping stone piece that I talk about a lot, where if you kind of go from B-Rob Mason in a second, just condense all that into Flowers, and then you use Flowers and DJ Moore, condense those two into a better wide receiver. Maybe that's something that you could do. But I think if this was your end result of trading those 3 pieces for Flowers and Muth, because you don't need Muth either. I don't think that Flowers is the good end result with those 3 assets, I think. But if you want to use it as a stepping stone, and he's going to have solid production until you can trade him and bump up again. But if this is your final move, I don't know if I like Flowers enough like that. Maybe if it was Ayuk, I would do that for Ayuk. Can you get Ayuk now? That would be fun. Or maybe buy low on Waddle a little bit. Maybe those are more optimal wide receivers. Trade Pittman and Brooks for Ayuk, or Brooks for JMO, or Pittman and Elliott for Pickens. I would do the Brooks. I would not do the Pittman one for Pickens. I don't think I would do Pittman and Brooks for Ayuk. The Brooks for Jameson Williams one is really, really interesting. I might consider that if you need an extra wide receiver. But I'm not in love with the other two. Was offered Shannon and Jace. Give me stupid internet, dude. Man, even my StreamYard like broke out. Might have to call it early. Paris for Achan and Wright for Odunze and JSN. This one's interesting because I love Achan. I think that he's very much the best player on this team or best player in this deal. From a Dynasty's perspective, I don't know how much I love it though. I think I would do it. If you need this, if you don't need Odunze and JSN, they're just kind of like depth wide receivers for you. I think I might do it, but I'm not like super in love with it. But I don't hate it. Ayuk and Waddle owners are in hard rebuilds. Oh man. Yeah, maybe it is just do that for Flowers. Then, like I said, try to see what you can package Flowers and T. Higgins or Flowers and where was that? Flowers and Pickens, Flowers and DJ Moore. Maybe you could do a 2-for-1 up there. Lounging Bear. Sorry, I missed your question. What draft capital would you add to Garrett Wilson to get to Lamb? Oh, yeah. A first round pick. Or I would do like Wilson and I wouldn't do Wilson and BTJ, but I would do Wilson and a random first if you have it. I'm weak at running back, but JSN and Odunze are more so my cornerstones in depth. Okay. If that's the case, it doesn't sound like you're necessarily competing. Is that true? Is that kind of accurate? If you're not competing this year, I want JSN and Odunze. And if you're on the fence, I want JSN and Odunze. Yeah, Mason. Mason for sure is a temporary asset. I don't think Brian Robinson's a temporary asset. I think that he is like a borderline top 15 dynasty running back. He's good, dude. And in this Cliff Kingsbury offense, he's good. So I like Brian Robinson. I don't know if maybe he is more temporary, sure, but yeah, it could just be me with Flowers. I'm not a huge Flowers fan, so maybe it's that. It's just, but there really aren't a lot of other running backs. Yes, you did, Joe. I saw that trade go through, and I was mad about it because I would have paid a second for B Rob too. Brian Robinson is what I was hoping Roshan would be. Yeah. Maybe Country Time. Maybe it is just Zay Flowers then, and then you just try to see if you can just upgrade from there. Do the 2-for-1 like I was saying. Try to do a 2-for-1 to move up to Nico, to move up to Garrett Wilson, to move up to maybe AJ Brown as a buy low right now. Up to Puka as a buy low. Maybe that's the long-term goal. And you just take Flowers. I'm not opposed to it. I wasn't planning on competing, but I'm 2-0. Oh. Had some breakouts like Dobbins and JMO. Your team is very young. I just don't think I have the running backs to compete. Well, if that's the case, so then now this is potential advice in the opposite direction. You found yourself 2-0 with a team that you weren't expecting to be competitive with. I would not currently push your dynasty chips in to compete this year. You found yourself at 2-0, so that's pretty good. And I would not be making big moves like trading JSN and Odunze then for Achan. So I would reject that trade offer. It's a solid offer, but I wouldn't do that. I would rather see how can I supplement my running back position, especially with the running backs. Like That's the one position that it does seem so important, but it also feels the easiest to kind of spot start and supplement throughout the year, right? So like instead of going to buy Achan, how could you buy Brian Robinson? How could you buy David Montgomery? How could you buy Tony Pollard for a lot cheaper without having to dig into your JSN and Roma Dunze bank, so to speak, you know? So if you weren't planning on competing, I'd imagine that you have some extra draft capital that maybe you could maneuver some of that. You could trade a second or two that you had extra to try to see if you could then try to compete a little bit more and make more micro moves and micro bets rather than cashing in some of your bigger dynasty chips. That's how I would go about it, Paris. I'm going to have a video coming out, I think in 2 weeks. I think it was a week 4 video or maybe a week 5 video. At the end of September, I'll have a video coming out basically talking through where if your team is here, these are the moves that you should be trying to make, and that's more or less the advice that I'll be talking about in that video, Paris, for a team like you. If you found yourself just kind of actually competing that you didn't think was, you know, smaller moves are probably the way to go. Trey Benson and Zay Flowers or Odunze and Jalen Warren? I will take Benson and Zay Flowers here. Competing roster, but older, worth moving off of Tyreek for Ayuk plus? Yeah, I would love to. He has AJ Brown and Puka as well. Well, I would love to. Can you turn Tyreek into AJ Brown? I would love. Even as a contender, I would love to do that. But I like the Ayuk plus idea. I like all of these. If you can move 1 for 1, Tyreek for AJ Brown or Tyreek for Puka, AJ Brown and Puka might be rough on your competing roster because they're not playing. But I love Ayuk in a first for Tyreek. If you can make that happen, I would definitely do that. I won a championship last year, starting Justice Hill and Pierre Strong most of the year with Taylor out at times. Yeah, I won a championship in 2022 on the back, or was that last year? No, 2022. On the back of Jerick McKinnon's like 6-game stretch to end the year. He was like my third best player. So yeah, you could definitely spot start running backs a lot easier too. I wouldn't say that they're easier to supplement for sure. I don't know if they're easier to find. Maybe they are slightly easier to find because it could be kind of somewhat predictable. But yeah, you can definitely spot start running backs for a contending roster. If Kyler plays this season the way he's played the last 2 weeks, would he be a top tier of QB for you? He is my QB. Let's think about this for a second. Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, Kyler. He'd be my QB5. I think he is my QB5 right now. I would take him over Stroud. So, do you consider that top tier already if he's a top 5 guy? Because he already is a top 5 guy for me. But I've been above market on him for quite some time. Stroud would be 6. And then Daniels or Caleb would be 7 or 8. Yeah, somewhere in there. Then Richardson, maybe after that. Then Dak. But Kyler, top 5. I've been wanting to send Dobbins for Benson Plus. I feel like that fits my build more as I'm more so shooting for next year. Do you still believe in Benson? Yes, I do. I definitely believe that Benson has great handcuff ability right now in 2024. And then I think that he is the starter in 2025. I think they move on from James Conner, give the keys over to Trey Benson, or maybe if they retain Conner, it's kind of like an Achan, Raheem Mostert kind of dynamic, which I know like Mostert's been hurt. So Achan's got a lot of it, but I think that is more ideally what the Dolphins wanted. So maybe that's what the Cardinals get. But I think by next year, Benson takes the lead. If not even is like the full-time workhorse guy with Connor not on the team anymore. Are you selling JK before he comes back down to earth? Good question. I think so. because I don't believe that this is sustainable. I don't believe that off of an Achilles injury and an ACL injury that what he's doing now is massively sustainable. So if he gets me into a running back range, like where is he on keep trade cut? He's got to be high. On keep trade cut, he's the RB 19. Which if he gets you closer to getting into the Josh Jacobs tier, into the Kenneth Walker tier, Travis Etienne tier, I think that I'd rather do that because I have a lot more confidence in those guys in terms of their historical workload, injury, like what Joe said. If Dobbins were to get hurt again, done. He's probably gonna Tariq Cohen, where it's just like I did an Achilles, I did an ACL, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. I'm out of here, kind of thing. Whereas if Walker got hurt for an extended period of time, or Etienne got hurt for an extended period of time, it would suck and he would lose value, but he wouldn't be dead like Dobbins would be. So I think if you could use him to upgrade, I wouldn't look to side grade. Like I'm not all that interested in side grading Dobbins over to Monty or Rashad White or James Conner. I feel like at that point they're all kind of ish similar. If I can use them to upgrade, I would love that. You just listed Daniels, Caleb, and Dan, and ahead of Burrow. Where does Burrow fall? He literally next. Burrow right now, he's still a QB1, and probably would have been top 10. Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, Kyler, Stroud, Daniels, Caleb, Richardson. Yeah, Burrow would then be 10 if I'm looking at this. Then you get Dak and Love probably close out the top 12. I don't make rankings like this. I make rookie rankings, but I don't make dynasty rankings like that. But I know my values more or less. So yeah, Burrow would have been 10. The reason why the other guys are ahead of Burrow is because they have the rushing ability, and Burrow's injuries. No, I have Burrow QB 10, and then Dak would be 11 or 12 with Love. The injury seems like Burrow seems like he has this wrist injury has lingered, and it's kind of annoying. Burrow could very easily get ahead of Caleb and Daniels and Richardson for sure. I could see him just going right back up above a 1 or 2 or even all 3 of those guys. But as of right now, Burrow, I still have a top 10 guy, but the rookies I think are a little bit more interesting right now, and they have Daniels has the rushing upside, and Richardson is just about as boom bust as you could possibly get. You're also worried about Burrow's injury, but when health and with his he's so freaking good. That is really annoying. Like him and Justin Herbert are so annoying because they're so good. It's just that Burrow has had these injuries, and then when he's healthy, then Chase is hurt or Higgins is constantly hurt, and then Herbert is being drugged down by the Harbaugh Roman system. So it's so annoying with those two because they're legitimately two of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, and we can't trust them as much as we should because of injury or situation. And it's so annoying. But yeah, I agree with you that if Burrow were to come back to, back to form more or less, that he would be above Richardson and probably Caleb and Daniels then to be in QB 7 behind Stroud, which is where he's at in ADP right now. He's QB 7. One spot ahead of Kyler, but I'd have Kyler ahead. Would you spend a second on Tua? Yes, I would. In Superflex, I would. I don't think I would in a 1-quarterback league, but in Superflex, I would pay a second for Tua. I do think that he comes back. I think that he probably takes a month-ish or so to kind of come back, and then he'll be playing. So I'd pay a second for Tua. Flip the Porta for Kyler in the offseason because I had McBride and my team looking money. Appreciate the insight. Oh, God, I love it. Kyler Murray, man. He's so good. Oh, sorry. Hypersonic, start Carr or Richardson. I would start Derek Carr this week. I was even about to say, if you need ultimate Exodia obliterate upside this week, then start Anthony Richardson. Like you're projected to lose by 30 fantasy points with Derek Carr in, then sure, throw in Anthony Richardson. But nothing really happened last night to where like we didn't have like an H-Chan or a Cook performance last night to where if you were losing now all of a sudden because of one of them that maybe you want to throw in Richardson. I think in 9 times out of 10, I would start Derek Carr. Was just offered Ladd, Warren, and a second for Dobbins and JMO. I would take Dobbins and JMO there. Internet, dude. What was everybody saying about the internet? Have you tried dial up? It's the company. It's 100% the company. I want to switch. I'm going to switch to Xfinity. I'm going to do one more service call with this provider, freaking Braelon. And then if that doesn't work, I'm going to switch to Xfinity. 100%. Maybe I'll switch this Ethernet cord first. That seems low cost. Toronto Dave, 12 by 10, Superflex PPR. Herbert and Tyreek or Carr, Nico, and a 26 first. Oh my gosh. I will take. I don't like this. The reason why I don't like this is because I don't like what this value means for Justin Herbert. I would take Nico over Tyreek. I don't like trading Herbert for Derek Carr in a first. I really don't like that. But I understand it, but I just don't like it. I think sure. Okay. I'll take Carr and Nico in a first. I just don't like it. All right. Rapid fire these last couple of questions from Philip, and then I got to get out of here because my internet is getting destroyed. Currently rebuilding and planning to compete in 2025. Any moves when to buy a wide receiver? London. I'll take Rice over London for sure. That's an easy one. Purdy and a 25 first or Jalen Hurts. That's Jalen Hurts. That's an easy one. Is this the same team? Yeah. Honestly, like you might get some really good rookie wide receivers in next year's class with those 4 firsts. Like depending on where they are, if you end up with one of Tet or Luther Burden, or you get Evan Stewart, or you get what were the other? I'm blanking on who some of the other kids' names are. Like Ibuka. If you get like 2 of them, that would be fantastic. Maybe you could use some of the first to buy low on some of on guys like right now. Like you already have Puka, like he would have been a fantastic example. Maybe you can use one of the first to buy low on Waddle. I don't know. That would be what I would be looking at. But with those first, you probably are going to end up with a couple of good rookies next year. Mitchell, in a super solid league, how many firsts are guys like Josh Allen and Justin Jefferson worth? Or should they just be untouchable if not in a complete rebuild? Assuming this is super flex, Josh Allen's probably worth like 4 firsts, maybe even 5. Justin Jefferson's probably worth 4 as well. And that probably makes them untouchable. Like I wouldn't trade Josh Allen for 5 first round picks, because the only way that you're probably getting to 5 is you're probably getting maybe 2 25s, 2 26, and a 27, or some combination of that. And I don't really think that's worth it to sell Josh Allen. So I think if you have them, they're probably untouchable, because I don't think anybody is going to send you 5 firsts. And I think if they do, it's probably not an accumulation of 5 firsts that really makes it worth it. So yeah, it's hard to trade superstar studs for just picks. Captain Joe King, what's up, man? Traded Worthy and Flowers for Bowers. Nice. I love that a lot. I know, pretty bold. I just think there's a new king in town, and Bowers and finishes as a tight end 1. No, I like that a lot. I would take Brock Bowers there. David, trade Pacheco and Shaheed for Monty, Henry, and a first. Yes. I think that's a good sell high on Shaheed right now. You're basically like, I would trade Pacheco for Monty in a first and then trading Shaheed for Henry, or if you trade Pacheco for Henry in a first and then you trade Shaheed for Monty, any way that you really look at this, I think that's a win for you. So I like it. All right. I got to call that there because I keep seeing my little Wi-Fi thing pop up and it's really annoying me. So I don't want to drop or be dropped because of Wi-Fi anymore. So hopefully we get that looked at. But I appreciate all of you guys for hanging out for the past 2 hours. It was I appreciate every single one of you guys for hanging out, asking questions, and yeah. So I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day on Friday. Hope you guys take advantage of some really nice, at least here in central Pennsylvania, we have some nice weather going on outside. So enjoy it while it lasts. Have a fantastic weekend, guys, with your family, friends, football, college football, and on Sunday, NFL football. Don't know if my internet's not letting me do anything, but yes, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you guys for hanging out. I got to call it here while my internet is trash. So we'll see you guys next week, next Friday, same time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So until then, peace.